By the early 20th century, the great powers had formed two military alliances. The Entente, which included France, the Russian and British empires, as well as the Triple Alliance, which included the Kingdom of Italy, the German and Austro-Hungarian empires. Both alliances almost immediately began preparations for the upcoming war, not even suspecting how large-scale it would eventually turn out to be. When the assassination in Sarajevo set off the chain of events that led to the outbreak of hostilities, Italy, contrary to the expectations of its allies, was in no hurry to enter the war. King of Italy Victor Emmanuel explained his refusal to enter the war by the fact that Italy undertook to enter the war only if one of its allies was attacked, and Austria-Hungary started the war. Therefore, Italian troops are not required to start hostilities. After the Italian kingdom declared its neutrality, the Central Powers and the Entente began to make efforts to force the Italian king to enter the war on their side. In turn, the Italian government tried to negotiate the most favorable conditions for itself. In the end, the proposal of the Entente seemed to the Italian king more profitable, and on April 26, 1915, an agreement was concluded. Under the terms of this treaty, Italy pledged to enter the war on the side of the Entente, and the British Empire promised to give the Italian government a loan of £50 million. After the victory of the Entente in the war, the Italian kingdom was to receive the regions of Trentino, Trieste, Istria, South Tyrol and Dalmatia. Already on May 23, 1915, the Kingdom of Italy declared war on Austria-Hungary. On May 24, the Italian army, not having had time to complete the deployment of divisions, launched an attack, hoping to achieve its intended goals due to a twofold numerical advantage over the enemy. It should be mentioned that despite the fact that the Austro-Hungarian troops were in the minority, they were located in positions convenient for defense. The Italian army launched a simultaneous attack in 4 directions. She attacked enemy positions in the Carnic and Cadores Alps, as well as in Trentino and the Isonzo. Due to the fact that in Trentino, the Italian troops attacked down the slope, they managed to quickly move deep into enemy territory, reaching the Borgo-Rovereto line. The offensive in the Cadores Alps also proved to be quite successful, thanks to which the Italians managed to occupy the cities of Cortina d'Ampezzo and Monte Croce. In the Carnic Alps, the defense of the Austrians was able to contain the attacks of the Italian army. The direction of the main blow of the Italian army was the Isonzo area, where the most fierce battles began. Taking advantage of their numerical advantage, the Italians managed to form a river near the city of Plava and establish control over the nearby height of Monte Nero. Developing success, the Italian troops were able to occupy the city of Gorica, but they were soon driven out of it as a result of a counterattack by the Austrian army. Some time later, the Austrians received reinforcements in the form of 2 divisions, which made it possible to stop the advance of the Italian troops. Thus, the Italians did not succeed in capturing all the dominant heights, as the plan of the Italian offensive operation suggested. There was a temporary lull at the front. In the second half of June, the Italian command completed the concentration of troops on the front and began to plan a second offensive in the Isonzo area. On June 23, a new offensive of the Italian army began. The Italians began a massive shelling of enemy positions near Tolmino and Gorica in order to make it easier for their troops to expand the bridgehead. Very soon, a fierce battle ensued on the Kras Plateau, as a result of which both sides suffered huge losses. Having failed to take Tolmino and Gorica on July 7, the Italian command gave the order to stop the offensive and the hostilities acquired a positional character. Only on July 18, after the approach of reserves and regrouping, the Italian army launched a new offensive. By this time, the number of the Italian army in the Isonzo region had reached 250,000 soldiers, while the Austrians had only 87,000 soldiers. Despite the overwhelming numerical advantage, the Italians failed to overcome the enemy's defensive line. On August 3, having lost about 48,000 soldiers killed and wounded, the Italian army stopped the offensive. At the end of 1915, the Italian army carried out 2 more offensive operations in the Isonzo region, the purpose of which was not to break through the enemy's defenses, but to divert his forces in order to ease pressure on Serbia. On December 9, 1915, at the Conference of the Entente countries, a joint action plan was developed, which involved a simultaneous offensive on the western, eastern and Italian fronts. Since during the fighting the Italian army suffered impressive losses, it was decided to increase the maximum age of persons who can be mobilized. Thanks to the implementation of mobilization measures by April 1916, the Italians managed not only to make up for the losses suffered earlier, but to significantly increase the size of their army. In addition, the Italian army received additional artillery. Meanwhile, the Austrian command, having completed active offensive operations on the Eastern Front, was able to transfer additional forces to the Italian front. In March 1616, at the request of the commander of the French army, so that the Austrians could not transfer additional forces to Verdun, the Italian army launched a large-scale offensive in the Isonzo region. On March 11, the Italian troops went on the attack, which quickly choked, after which the Austrian army launched a counterattack. By March 29, active hostilities in the Isonzo region had ceased, and despite the losses suffered, neither side was able to significantly expand the territories under their control. Meanwhile, the Austrian command began to transfer additional forces from the eastern and Serbian fronts. The transfer of additional Austrian detachments to the Trentino region went unnoticed by the Italian command, which was busy preparing for the next offensive in the Isonzo region. On May 15, having secured a numerical advantage in the Trentino region, the Austrian army launched an offensive, before which powerful artillery preparation was carried out. Thanks to the rapid attack, the Austrians managed to quickly occupy the first line of defense of the Italians. Developing success, the Austrians managed to push the enemy back and advance 12 kilometers deep into his territory. The situation was critical, since the Italian command simply did not have the opportunity to quickly stabilize the front. Realizing the gravity of the situation, the Italian command turned to the command of the army of the Russian Empire with a request to launch an offensive in Galicia a month ahead of schedule. Meanwhile, the Austrians continued their offensive and by May 30 they managed to occupy the cities of Arciero and Asiago. The situation for the Italian army was rapidly deteriorating, so the Italian command again turned to the command of the Russian Empire with a request to launch an offensive within 24 hours. At this time, the Italians hastily transferred forces to hold back the enemy's advance. On June 4, the Russian army, as a result of the Brusilov's breakthrough, managed to overcome the defensive lines of the Austrians on the eastern front and occupy Lutsk. To remedy the situation, the Austrians had to transfer more than half of their forces from the Trentino region to Galicia. Thus, the Austrians simply could not continue moving deep into Italian territory, and on June 16, the Austrian detachments were ordered to stop active operations and go on the defensive. The Italians decided to take advantage of the serious weakening of the Austrian army grouping and decided to launch a counteroffensive in the Trentino region. The attack of the Italian army quickly bogged down and she had to go on the defensive. On August 7, the Italian army went on the offensive in the Isonzo area. Having crossed the Isonzo River near the city of Gorica, the Italians attacked the enemy positions. As a result of bloody battles, they managed to occupy the city and nearby settlements. Until the end of 1916, the Italian army tried 3 more times to attack the enemy in the Isonzo region, but all these attacks, despite the losses incurred, did not bring the desired result. At the beginning of 1917, the Italian command trained additional forces, and also increased the number of artillery at the front. Convinced that the Austrian command was not planning a new offensive in the Trentino region due to a lack of strength, the Italian command began preparing a new offensive in the Isonzo region. On May 14, the Italians began artillery preparation on the front between the cities of Plava and Gorica. After the completion of the artillery preparation, the Italian army launched an attack. As a result of a swift attack, the Italians managed to advance 3 kilometers deep into enemy territory. Directing a blow to the south, the Italians continued their offensive and managed to capture the first line of defense of the Austrians and a number of dominant heights. In this situation, the Austrian command feared that by continuing the offensive, the Italians could capture Trieste. Therefore, additional Austrian detachments were hastily transferred to the front. On June 10, 1917, the Italians attempted to attack enemy positions south of Trentino. The attacks of the Italian army continued until June 25, but in the end they were inconclusive. In the end, due to heavy losses, the Italians had to leave the previously captured enemy positions. On the night of August 18 to 19, the Italian command decided to launch another offensive in the Isonzo area. Italian detachments began building bridges, and by morning they managed to cross the river and, attacking enemy positions, advanced 10 kilometers deep into Austrian territory. Despite the fact that the Italian attack brought results on August 29, due to the fatigue of the troops, it was decided to stop it. Due to the lack of forces, the situation of the Austrian army was difficult. To remedy the situation, 7 German divisions were transferred to the front, which, together with the Austrian army, launched an attack on Italian positions near the cities of Tolmino and Plezzo. The attack of the Austro-German forces began on October 24 with a massive artillery bombardment. Having broken through the defenses of the Italians, the Austro-German detachments began to move deep into the territory of the enemy. Only 11 British and French divisions, which were supposed to arrive on the Italian front, could save the situation. While the help of the Allies was on the way, the Austrians managed to move deep into the territory of the enemy by November 10, reaching the Asiago-Belluno line. Due to the difficult situation at the front, the Italian government resigned. The Italian army continued to retreat, and only on November 19 the onslaught of the Austro-German troops began to weaken, thanks to which the Italians and the arrived Anglo-French divisions managed to form a defensive line on the Piave River. By the end of 1917, the Italian command directed all its forces to restoring the combat capability of the army, and the Austrians began preparations for a new offensive. On June 15, 1918, the Austrians launched an attack, which had limited success, but quickly bogged down. In this situation, the Austrian command decided to return the detachments to their original positions. In the autumn of 1918, inspired by the successes of the Allies on the Western Front, the Italian command began preparations for the offensive. On October 24, Italian troops launched an attack. The moment turned out to be quite successful, since at that time the Slavic and Hungarian detachments of the Austrian army rebelled and refused to obey orders. Thus, the Italians were able to cross the Piave River and take 3 bridgeheads, but under enemy artillery fire they could not move further. By October 25, the Hungarian divisions began to leave the front under the pretext of defending their homeland from an enemy attack from Serbia. Since it was impossible to defend effectively in such a situation, the Austrian command on October 28 ordered its army to begin a retreat. The order to retreat almost completely demoralized the Austrian army, which refused to fight. In this situation, the Italians managed to land on November 3 in the vicinity of Trieste and occupy the city. On November 12, Austria was proclaimed a republic, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire ceased to exist. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to my channel and click on the bell so as not to miss new videos.